Drive safe.
Good evening, everyone. This is Don Taft with the
Caution,
Mack
please
Anthem
mind the speed.
with the Cummins ISX-12N Engine and the Allison transmission. And guess what that means? We're going to start with Kansas City, yay! And looks like looks like it's gonna be a long ride from Rio, and well, hopefully you guys should be fair enough.
Keep left.
Anyway,
And then turn left.
so I got the new trailer behind it.
Turn left.
And which is the drop back one. And
This is where it ends.
in fact, let's get the waste paper and get it moving. Get the ride moving.
Okay, here we go. Turn left. Right, and then turn right. Turn right.
Washington, where he's expected to sign more executive actions in front of supporters. A new lawsuit filed against President Trump claims his so-called Department of Government Efficiency violates federal transparency rules. That's the newly created group headed by Tesla CEO Elon Musk, whose mission is to revamp the federal government. NPR's Andrea Hsu.
The lawsuit was brought by two public interest nonprofits and a union representing some 800,000 government employees. It argues that Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, known as DOGE, is not in fact a government agency, but a kind of advisory committee tasked with recommending drastic cuts to government agencies and programs. The plaintiffs note that under federal law, such committees must have a, quote, fair balance in viewpoints represented, and that the work must be made available for public inspection. The lawsuit asks that DOGE be blocked from operating until those requirements are met. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
U.S. financial markets are closed for the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. You're listening to NPR News in Washington.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gail DeLauder. With severe weather moving in tonight, the Houston area could see historic levels of snowfall. We could have 1 to 3 inches of snow in the region overnight into Tuesday. National Weather Service meteorologist Bradley Brokamp says places to the south could get even more.
And again, we could potentially get higher than 6 inches of fall. That's certainly a possibility still at this time.
Authorities are urging people to stay off the roads tonight. Meanwhile, CenterPoint Energy says it's staging crews and ready to respond. The company says 3,000 workers are on standby. CenterPoint's Keith Stevens says they're concerned about getting to some areas that may need attention during the freeze.
I would say the one thing that we're going to need to keep in mind is it's going to be precipitation on the ground. It's going to be cold tomorrow night and freeze. So access is going to be key for us. We're going to be out trying to do our work, but getting on some of those roads may be more treacherous. We're just going to have to wait and see what that looks like.
CenterPoint says it's made a lot of improvements since Hurricane Beryl last summer. That includes stronger power poles along with trimming hundreds of miles of trees along power lines. The Archdiocese of Galveston-Houston has a new archbishop. Pope Francis has accepted Cardinal Daniel DiNardo's resignation and appointed Austin Bishop Joe Vasquez. DiNardo is retiring now that he's turned 75. He says he's confident he's leaving the Archdiocese in good hands.
Bishop Vasquez is a faithful, articulate, and, what's very important, bicultural bishop who has wisely led the Diocese of Austin for the last 15 years.
Vasquez says he hopes to attract younger generations to the Catholic Church. The Rockets had a day game at Toyota Center on MLK Day. They fell to the Detroit Pistons 107-96. That winter storm warning and a cold weather watch go into effect at 6 tonight. It'll be windy this evening, 80% chance of sleet and snow. Overnight low drops down to about 26 degrees. For tomorrow, snow showers early, icy precipitation throughout the day. It'll be breezy, high around 34. I'm Gail DeLauder, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, helping NPR advance journalistic excellence in the digital age.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Elsa Chang in Culver City, California.
And I'm Ari Shapiro in Washington, where this afternoon it became official. President Trump was sworn into office. He took the oath for the second time, becoming the 47th president, and he vowed to immediately get to work.
Today I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense.
Go straight on.
Trump has promised a barrage of executive action covering immigration, the federal workforce, the economy, and more. This is a dramatic move straight out of the gate, reflecting Trump's desire to make the most of these critical first few months in office. NPR White House correspondent Franco Ordonez is at the White House, where Trump is expected to sign most of these actions. Hi, Franco.
Hey, Ari.
What more can you tell us about the executive actions he's expected to sign?
Yeah, we're expecting he'll sign some at the Capitol One Arena, where he's meeting with supporters very, very shortly. But there are dozens in play today, as many as 100 to 200, according to some accounts. They fall largely in 3 buckets: border security, energy, and government reform. I mean, he's basically sweeping aside many of President Biden's policies, reinstating those from his first term in office, and then going much, much further. He's also saying that he's going to pardon at least some of those arrested for their role in the riot at the Capitol on January 6, 2021.
The big focus here, obviously, is immigration. We'll be talking about that in more detail later in the show. But what is the significance of him taking these actions today, right away?
Caution.
I mean, what it shows is how far Trump is willing to go to make up for basically lost time and expand his presidential powers. I mean, just as an example, he plans to launch the largest deportation operation in history. He also wants to end birthright citizenship for the children who are here illegally. And some of these steps, like birthright citizenship, will no doubt face challenges in court and potentially in Congress.
Since it is protected in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Right. In the inaugural address today, we heard Trump call for a revolution of common sense. What did he mean by that?
I mean, that is how he describes his agenda, of course. But when it comes to these executive orders, he's really leaning into the culture wars that were a big part of his campaign.
I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life.
Now, he's promised to roll back protections for transgender people. He's going to sign an executive order stating that it's the policy of the U.S. to recognize two biological distinct sexes, male and female. An incoming White House official told reporters that the government will use these definitions for documents like passports and employee records.
Is the focus just on domestic policy today, or are there elements of his foreign policy in play also?
I mean, another theme on the campaign has been that the U.S. is being taken advantage of by countries around the world, and he's promising an executive order that signals America's place as, quote, the greatest, most powerful, most respected nation on earth.
A short time from now, we are going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
You talked about other name changes as well, but does signing these immediately make them policy? You said some are likely to be challenged in court.
I mean, some of these are likely to be proclamations or recommendations to various agencies, but some will take effect immediately. Others, for sure, are going to face legal challenges. I mean, just in this example, you can expect court challenges against Trump's plan to reclassify tens of thousands of federal workers so that they can more easily be fired and replaced with loyalists. I mean, there is a lot to be hashed out, but regardless, there's going to be a lot of changes ahead.
White House correspondent Franco Ordonez, thanks for walking us through this.
Thanks, Ari.
Many people are beginning to venture back into their burned or damaged homes in Los Angeles, or they're cleaning up the toxic ash that's spread across the region. Alejandra Barunda from NPR's Climate Desk talked to experts about how to safely approach the cleanup process.
UCLA pulmonologist Reza Ranagi lost his house in the Pacific Palisades in last week's fires.
Not a single house survived in our kind of 2-block area, so the street before ours and the street after ours.
A few days later, city officials let Ranagi and a group of his neighbors back to assess the damage. He wore an N95 mask, but he quickly realized the mask wasn't enough. In less than half an hour,
my eyes were watering. Even with my N95, I could still smell the smoke, and so I was coughing.
The short-term health effects are one thing, but Ranagi's more worried about the long-term risks of exposure.
But now you're dealing with organic volatiles that come from the burning of the house, the roof, the appliance, right?
Couches, coolants, refrigerators. Burning all that releases a potentially toxic mix, from carcinogenic gases like benzene to heavy metals or asbestos fibers. It's present in the ash and smoke, not only in the destroyed neighborhoods, but across the city.
Those are actually much more dangerous than what smoke may do to your lungs alone. Right now we're talking long-term consequences.
Scientists still don't totally know what those health consequences are, but after the Lahaina wildfires in 2023, residents exposed to smoke and ash experienced increases in heart, kidney, and mental health issues. Ranagi was really worried that people in LA didn't know the risks, so he started alerting people to take precautions when they went back.
To our few friends and family and neighbors, it's just been either text message or phone calls.
N95s or even respirators, gloves, goggles, long pants, the whole protective shebang. Ranagi's house was totally destroyed, but many other people's homes weren't burned to the ground, and they're now filled with toxic smoke and ash. Colleen Reed is a health geographer at the University of Colorado Boulder. She studied the lingering health impacts of smoke and ash in people's homes after Colorado's Marshall Fire in 2021. Like Runagi, she says take the cleanup risks seriously because the ash can get back into the air.
We found that when people cleaned, it resuspended that ash. We could measure that the PM levels went up. So, like, you want to wear a mask that's protecting you from that.
Or even consider hiring professional environmental cleaners. Yost Tagaw is another University of Colorado Boulder scientist. He was part of a different study after the Marshall Fire that looked at how deep smoke got into people's houses.
That smoke managed to penetrate indoors through cracks underneath doors, windows, etc.
And not just that, dangerous gases like benzene and formaldehyde came in with the smoke too.
What happened to the gases, in part, was that they got absorbed into building materials.
Wood framing, and maybe even drywall, along with furniture and mattresses. The gases stuck around for up to 5 weeks. Tagaw's group found that running activated carbon air filters constantly could suck away those dangerous gases. That, plus wiping down surfaces again and again, will go a long way toward making your home safe again. For NPR News, I'm Alejandra Baronda.
This weekend, the NFL had it all. A big upset, a blow-for-blow showdown between two MVP candidates, a true snow game, and maybe the worst performance of all came from the only squad that appeared in all 4 games, the refs. NPR sports correspondent Becky Sullivan is here with a recap. Hey, Becky.
Hi.
I'm here in Washington, D.C., so are you. Can't help but notice this weekend was a big one for the hometown Commanders.
You bet. And before we talk about them, a little rest in peace to the 2024 Detroit Lions, who all season long looks like the team to beat, seemed like they were going to be a lock for the Super Bowl. And it was like a feel-good story, a team that has not only not won a Super Bowl before, but not even appeared in one, but they were hit by this like tidal wave of injuries to their defense over the season that set them back. They also turned the ball over 5 times on Saturday night, and they simply ran into this 24-year-old buzzsaw named Jaden Daniels, who is Washington's rookie quarterback.
Yeah, so back to the Commanders. Seems like he has been playing great all year long.
Absolutely, yeah. I think he's a lock for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And it's crazy because, transitioning to the NFL is usually hard, even for the most talented prospects, especially for quarterbacks. Often they are taken by the very worst teams, so they're walking into the worst situations. One result of that is that no rookie quarterback has ever started a Super Bowl for his team, but Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders are just one win away from that. So to do that, next weekend, they will have to beat the Philadelphia Eagles, who themselves looked very solid in a snowy game, win over the Los Angeles Rams last night. Their star Saquon Barkley, their running back, looked incredible. These two teams, the Commanders and the Eagles, have played twice in the regular season already. They split those 2 games, 1-1, so it's anybody's guess who takes this one.
Okay, so Commanders or Eagles versus who? Who's going to go to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, that's going to come down to the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. So the Chiefs beat the Houston Texans to reach what is a 7th straight conference championship for them. That is crazy. They are aiming to win their 3rd straight Super Bowl, which would be a first in the history of the NFL. To do so, they'll have to beat the Buffalo Bills, who have never won a Super Bowl. They lost 4 in a row in the early 90s, famously. They earned their spot with a Sunday night win over the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore quarterback Lamar Jackson is an astonishingly good player. He may likely win his 3rd MVP award this season, but he had 2 bad turnovers last night. And just overall, this lack of playoff success for the Ravens, I think, has got to be frustrating. And it just goes to show how tough I think the AFC is for quarterbacks. You have Mahomes with the Chiefs, Allen with the Bills, Lamar Jackson with the Ravens. Incredible that really only one of them can make it out, make it to the Super Bowl.
Aside from all the players, referees got a lot of attention this weekend. What happened?
Yeah, I should start by saying that reffing an NFL game in real time is hard. The game moves so fast in real life. There's a lot of things to look at on every play. The NFL does review calls every game, every week. They say overall about 99% of calls are right, but the 1% can be bad. And this weekend, there were some really bad ones. A couple calls against defenders who were tackling Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs really got fans and commentators worked up, and I think for good reason. There were some questionable calls that led to points in the other games, too. The NFL has gotten replay officials more involved this year. I think there will be some pressure building to expand that to get more of these big-time penalties right going forward.
Lots to watch. NPR's Becky Sullivan, thank you for the recap.
You're welcome.
Weber with Houston Public Media's Fort Bend County Bureau. There's a lot to cover in Fort Bend County because we have both rural areas and more suburban communities like Sugarland and Missouri City, and we're also seeing the growth impact all different parts of the county, whether that's new schools opening in Katy or debates about whether to bring back a property tax in Stafford, and I think that makes it a really interesting place to cover.
After giving way for NPR coverage of Inauguration Day in Washington, Houston Matters returns Tuesday just in time for that wintry weather. I'm Craig Cohen. We'll have the latest on whatever's falling Tuesday morning. Join us.
That's tomorrow morning at 9, right after Morning Edition, here on News 88.7.
Support comes from the Houston Symphony, starting the new year with Tchaikovsky's Symphony No. 6, Patatik. Plus, concertmaster Yun-Shin Song performs Beethoven's Violin Concerto, January 24th through 26th. Tickets at houstonsymphony.org.
Support comes from attorney mediator Ron Bankston, providing in-person, video conference, and hybrid mediation and arbitration services. More at ronbankston.com. And Downtown Houston Plus, introducing quarterly market reports on the trends happening downtown, including retail openings, visitor trends, and real estate performance. Available under research and reports at downtownhouston.org. This is News 88.7. I'm Brenda Valdivia. There is a winter storm warning and cold weather advisory tonight that will be in effect as cold weather will come through. Gusts of winds as high as 30 miles per hour. Tonight's lows in the upper 20s. Tomorrow's high in the mid-30s. And tomorrow, an extreme cold watch is in effect for tomorrow night. It's currently 37 and overcast here at the University of Houston. The University of Houston. And the City of Houston is warning people to protect what they can, people, pets, pipes, and plants. This is News 88.7.
I'm going to be signing on the J6 hostages, pardons, to get them out. And as soon as I leave, I'm going to the Oval Office and we'll be signing pardons for a lot of people, And thank you to Steve Woodcoff. He's a great guy. He's a friend of mine. He's been a very successful man. He's a great negotiator. He's a wonderful guy. People love him, and he's got a tremendous power of persuasion. And that's what we need. We don't need stiffs. We got a lot of stiffs. You just had a whole load of them. And to the former hostages with us today, welcome. Welcome home. Some of the folks are former hostages. Not a good situation. The three young ladies that came home yesterday, you saw that. They're more coming home every day now. They're coming home. But they were hurt. One had her head blown off, fingers on her hand indeed was blown off.
Right. And then
she was trying to defend herself from a bullet being fired. You believe this? A bullet knocked off her hand.
Exit right.
I don't know. You look at it, it's a disgrace. We never stopped praying for you, and we're so glad that you're reunited with your friends and families, and God bless you all. And some of them are just saying, no, my son is gone, but please just bring home his body. Right, Steve? Many of you have told me that your son is gone, but bring home his body. It should have never happened. 3 years, it's ridiculous. Should have never happened. Wouldn't have happened. I also want to express my tremendous gratitude to the hundreds of thousands of proud American patriots who came from all across the country to join us in this celebration. It's a celebration of a big win. And you're witnessing the dawn of the golden age of America. That's what it's going to be. We're bringing it back. We're going to bring it back fast. We're going to bring it back fast. Let us also thank the incredible service members, National Guardsmen, Police, Secret Service, and law enforcement personnel who are keeping us all safe. Even though, and they are great people. New York's finest. I grew up with New York's finest, and we got to give them their authority back. You won't have any crime. There'll be no crime. You give them little authority back. The whole way they run things in this country now, it's disgraceful. But it's going to change rapidly. We're going to make our cities safe again, too. Even though we're indoors, we've had a magnificent inaugural parade. And let's give a big round of applause. They were great. To all of the incredible performers and hardworking men and women who made it possible. Those people, really talented, amazing people. I also want to thank my wonderful family for being here, especially my beautiful wife, our First Lady, Melania. They love our First Lady. And also, JD. How good has JD been? And his beautiful wife, Usha. How good is JB? JD has been great. He's another good negotiator, Steve. He's a great negotiator, too. We need negotiators in this country. But so many of the people on the stage behind, not only family members, as an example, Lara Trump, the wife of Eric. She was the head of the Republican Party, along with my friend Michael. Stand up, the two of you. What a job. What a job they did. They worked so hard. They knew there'd be rigging, but they said, we're going to make it too big to rig, and we did. We made it too big to rig. We won every swing state by a lot. We won the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. We won the whole ball of wax. And now we're going to go and drill, baby, drill, and do all the things that we've wanted to do and bring your costs down, your prices down, and make our country safe. So thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much. What a job you've done, Michael. I'm never moving you, you know. He was thinking about getting a nice job in the administration. I said, no, I'm leaving you right where you are. You've done a very good job. We're not moving you, Michael. I'm sorry. Anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate it very much. Right here with us also in the arena, I'm about to sign some very important executive orders of our new administration. Hey, Don, will you stand up, please? Don is another one. How about Don? This guy. He's a popular one. He goes out and speaks. He gets that big crowd. He's a little on the rough side sometimes, but that's what you want. He's done a fantastic job, and he loves our country. Thanks, Don. Great job. You've done a great job. And Ivanka. And, you know, Jared negotiated the Abraham Accords, which are the biggest deal made in the Middle East in many, many years, and it's really something. Jared, stand up, Jared. The Abraham Accords. And Tiffany's going to have a little baby. And Michael. And then I have a very tall son named Barron. Has anyone ever heard? You know, we won the youth vote by 36 points. And he was saying, Dad, you got to go out and do this one and that one. And we did a lot of them. And he respects them all. He understood them very well. And He said, Dad, you got to go out, do Joe Rogan, do all these guys. And we did. We did, and Joe Rogan was great. They were all great, right? Darren, they were all good. He understood the market. Another famous one, how about Kai? Stand up, Kai. Is that Byron Donalds back there? Stand up, Byron. Stand up. What a future this one had. What a future. That's great, Byron. Thank you very much. And how about Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce? He's going to take in more money than any country has ever even thought about. He's going to take in some money. And we have many others. Look, I'm not going to go through it, but we're going to sign some orders right now, and that's really what I want to do. So we're going to sign executive orders. First, I'll revoke nearly 80 destructive and radical executive actions of the previous administration, one of the worst administrations in history. Maybe not one of them, the worst. Anybody that would allow me...
Today is New Member Monday. Embark on an exciting journey by becoming a new member of Houston Public Media. Kickstart your week with a commitment to supporting reliable news, educational documentaries, and captivating arts. Select a contribution level that suits you and in return enjoy exclusive access to our streaming service on the PBS app. Your donation at HoustonPublicMedia.org not only grants you these benefits, but also contributes to our mission of informing, educating, and inspiring Houston. Become a new member today.
Support comes from UT Health Houston, home to Dr. Ramesha Papana and the Fetal Center team, who pioneered a prenatal patch to help babies with spina bifida walk earlier and better. More at uth.edu/manyfaces.
Support also comes from Blake Helligeist Real Estate, independent commercial and residential real estate broker with over 30 years experience, guiding clients through economic downturns, realty challenges, and everyday life situations. More at BlakeSellsHouston.com. This is News 88.7.
What, 5 minutes? Is that them over there? 5 minutes? And next, to gain immediate control of the vast federal, out-of-control bureaucracy, I will implement an immediate regulation freeze, which will stop Biden bureaucrats from continuing to regulate. Most of those bureaucrats are being fired. They're gone. Should be all of them, but some sneak through, but we have to live with a couple, I guess. I'll also issue a temporary hiring freeze to ensure that we're only hiring competent people who are faithful to the American public. And we will pause the hiring of any new IRS agents. We will also require that federal workers must return to the office in person. And we're going to take the 88,000 people that they hired to go after you with guns. By the way, they're allowed to use guns and harass you like they were so many other people. Remember this. Okay, remember? Do you remember a little statement about tips? Does anybody remember that little statement? I think we won Nevada because of that statement. But they went out and harassed you over the tips. In other words, we are restoring control of our government to the people. We're going to take those 88,000. Let's see if they'd like to work on the border, because that's what we want. I'm really good. So we're going to have no tax on tips, right? No tax on tips. We may have, like the Speaker of the House. Is he here? He's done such a good job. Is Mike here? He's around here someplace. I saw him just a little while ago. Hello, fellas.
Live from the Texas newsroom, I'm Gail DeLauder. Parts of Texas are in for freezing weather. The areas of South and Southeast Texas expecting major impacts. Airports and schools are closed all along the coast through Louisiana. That's as the region could see up to 5 or 6 inches of snow, depending on location. Parts of Metro Houston could be in for several inches of snow and freezing precipitation.
Keep left.
And with icy weather expected in highly populated areas, many say they're worried about a repeat of power outages from the winter storm 4 years ago. Houston Public Media's Andrew Schneider says Centerpoint is taking steps to keep the lights and heat on for millions of people in the region.
Centerpoint says 1,200 additional mutual aid workers are arriving today to help with potential power restoration efforts. Company spokesperson Michelle Hundley says that essentially doubles Centerpoint's response workforce.
If there are icy conditions, though I know I'm hearing now that it may be more sleet and snow, but if there happens to be some icy conditions, there could potentially be outages because of the ice. But we are certainly ready, and we've been prepared, and we continue to prepare, and we will respond as quickly and safely as possible.
Hundley is urging residents to stay off the roads to allow room for all emergency responders, including Centerpoint teams, to cope with the storm. I'm Andrew Schneider in Houston.
The daughter of former Texas Governor Ann Richards has died. Cecile Richards was known as a former president of Planned Parenthood. She died of an aggressive form of brain cancer. Richards was 67. I'm Gail DeLauder from the Texas Newsroom.
Support for these Texas headlines comes from Aspire Allergy and Sinus, providing same-day results and custom treatment plans to tackle allergies at the root of the problem. Over 40 locations throughout Texas. More info at aspireallergy.com.
This is News 88.7. Tonight's low around 27 degrees with a winter storm warning and cold advisory for tonight. Tomorrow's high only 34 degrees. Expect sleet, freezing rain, snow showers before 4 a.m. tonight. And tomorrow extending into an extreme cold watch. It's currently 37 degrees and overcast here at the University of Houston. The city of Houston is warning people to protect people, pets, pipes, and plants. This is News 88.7, your NPR station.
Industries, while China pollutes with impunity. You know, China, I mean, look, they use a lot of dirty energy, but they produce a lot of energy. And when that stuff goes up in the air, you know, it doesn't stay there. It's not like you got a wall. We love walls, don't we? Not like you have a wall around and it doesn't. It floats into the United States of America after 3.5 to 5.5 days. It floats across the oceans and it comes right over your neighborhood and it falls into your neighborhood.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. That is President Trump speaking live at the Capital One Arena here in Washington, D.C., where his inaugural parade was moved because of severely cold temperatures. He's about to sign some of the day one executive orders that he promised. I'm here with my co-host Elsa Chang and with NPR correspondents Franco Ordonez and Mara Liasson. Mara, let's start with you. Trump is still speaking. Some of the statements we just heard were not true, from false claims that countries are emptying mental institutions to send people to the United States, to claims that he won the youth vote by 36 points, which he did not. Could you just begin with a fact check? What stood out to you?
He lost the youth vote by 4 points. He did really good for a Republican with the youth vote, but he did not win it by 36 points. He said hundreds of thousands of people have come for his inauguration. Now, that one we would have to check, but I don't think that that's true. He also said a lot of things that were just unclear, like he wants to fire 88,000 people with guns, and we don't know who he's talking about. He's also he's done this before, but he made a lot of claims about windmills killing whales, windmills killing birds.
A lot of this was stuff we heard from him during the campaign.
Yes, during the campaign
speech.
Yes, and he's pretty much riffing, although he does have a stack you could see of binders that looked like about 10 to 12 executive orders that he's going to sign. Some of them are no more significant than a press release. He said one of them is going to direct his cabinet to do everything they can to defeat inflation. Well, that's just a pronouncement. But he hasn't mentioned this yet. If he is also signing an executive order to get rid of birthright citizenship, that's significant. That will be tested in court. It is something that's enshrined in the Constitution, and he'll have a little bit more of a struggle to see if he can enact that.
Yeah, let's talk more about that. Franco Ordonez. I mean, of course, we're focused on these remarks right now because we expect Trump to sign a series of executive actions after he's done talking. What do you expect will be at the top of Trump's list after these remarks tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the top of the list is no doubt doubt it's going to be immigration. I mean, this is an issue that Trump ran on. It was what he called one of the most important challenges facing the country. Earlier today, his team outlined 10 different executive actions related to the border. He's going to declare an emergency at the border and begin, what we've reported many times, the largest deportation operation in history. Mara just talked about plans to end birthright citizenship for the children of parents.
Which would involve amending the Constitution, right?
Yes, it's which is protected by the 14th Amendment right now. So there is no doubt that will face legal challenges in court, in Congress, in public sphere. But I think what it does show is that President Trump is really willing to, or how far he is willing to go to kind of make up for lost time and really expand his presidential powers. He did a lot of this in his first administration with, for example, the travel ban on Muslim-majority countries, taking that all the way to the Supreme Court. All signs indicate that he's willing to go even farther, do more this second time around.
And real quick, Franco, declaring a national emergency at the border, what does that do exactly? Like, what does President Trump unlock by declaring a national emergency at the border?
By declaring a national emergency, basically what that does is it kind of unlocks funds and potentially military resources to kind of surge those resources at the border. I think with this, you could also perhaps expect some challenges, but he did work on some of this before, and I anticipate that he is going to do that again.
Mara, could you compare this to the last time President Trump took office? He has so much more power with unified Republican control of government, a Supreme Court that has given him more power than he had before. It's a different kind of first day of the Trump presidency.
Yeah. He's much more organized. He knows what he wants to do. He's not learning the ropes. He knows the ropes. He has filled his White House staff and his cabinet with people who have real fealty to him. In some cases, potentially more loyalty to him than to the Constitution if he's going to ask them to do certain things like use the military against civilian protesters. So yes, he knows what he wants to do. He has people who are going to comply. They're not going to be internal guardrails or people who push back against his policies. Now, there will be external features or factors that might stymie him. Some of these things will need approval by Congress. Some of these things will need buy-in from other countries. And he might be affected by public opinion or the Dow Jones average. He certainly won't be affected by the need to worry about running again because he's a lame duck.
And, you talked about how there will be diminished pushback. I mean, the fact that Democrats don't control a single branch of government, I'm just remembering in Washington 8 years ago, there were tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in the streets. Do you see that as being a different factor as he takes power?
Well, that certainly is a big difference. Whether it means that the, quote, resistance to Trump will be more or less successful, we don't know yet. I think there is a sense among Democrats that just opposing every single thing that he does or protesting him a kind of across the board is not the best strategy this time. There are a lot of Democrats who voted for the latest immigration bill, the Laken-Riley bill, which would make it easier to deport people without legal status in the country who've committed petty crimes. So I think that Democrats are trying to figure out, what do they do? How do they resist? They're getting ready, obviously, to run in the next midterms. But right now, I would say that Donald Trump has a very free hand.
Well, let's talk a little more about the resistance. Franco, what do we know so far about expected legal challenges to some of these executive actions being announced by President Trump? Like, which ones in particular, if you could talk more about that, and how soon might we see legal action?
Well, we talked a little bit about the birthright citizenship. That is one that'll no doubt have pushed. There's other ones that he has pushed for on immigration. There's Schedule F, which is another executive order that he plans to introduce. That is an order that would reclassify federal workers so that they can essentially be replaced by loyalists, making it easier to fire federal workers, kind of career officials, and replace them with people who would attend his or kind of focus or be more willing to kind of push forward his agenda. A lot of, federal unions and others have already talked about, challenging those in the courts, and I think you will see that as well. What the Trump administration kind of has in their pocket is they did do this in the last administration at the very end, but I think this time when I talk to kind of critics of the Trump administration, those involved, groups like the ACLU, they tell me that they have been kind of preparing for this moment for months, that while Trump and his team have been kind of, dusting off executive orders, dusting off a playbook to kind of really hit the ground running, they too have kind of been dusting off their own playbooks to attack and kind of defend what they see, whether it is Schedule F or whether it is immigration, the travel ban, and things like that.
And Mara, in 15 seconds, I'm just wondering, as you've been watching the day's events, what strikes you the most?
What strikes me the most is that Donald Trump hasn't changed. What you see is what you get. His grievances are the same as they've always been. He's just the same guy with the same goals. He feels about certain things very deeply. Immigration, January 6th.
Mara Allison and Franco Ordonez, you've been listening to live coverage of President Trump's speech at Capital One Arena. This is NPR News. Hurricane Helene severely damaged western North Carolina's national forests, including a lot of old-growth trees that are over 100 years old. Conservationists had hoped those trees would get protection from the Biden administration under a proposal to better manage the forests to withstand climate change. But those hopes were dashed earlier this month when the Forest Service abandoned the idea. Katie Myers of Grist and Blue Ridge Public Radio reports.
Josh Kelly walks softly on the bare winter ground in the Pisgah National Forest near Barnardsville, North Carolina. This is an old-growth forest, but he says it's not only the trees that matter.
Places like this that have never been logged is you have this soil profile that is just rich in nutrients and rich in history.
Kelly is a biologist who monitors logging for the advocacy group Mountain True. This is a co-forest because it's between mountain ridges and rugged, so it's been left alone from logging. That means some trees here are hundreds of years old.
Co-forests tend to be a real mix of ages, so while we have some of these big old trees, we've got middle-aged trees, we've got loads of these tiny saplings around.
But it's still considered an old-growth forest, and they've been suffering from a changing climate, says Will Harlan. He is the Southeast Director of the Center for Biological Diversity, an environmental advocacy group.
Climate change has been impacting the forests in a couple ways, but the main two are with droughts and floods.
The most recent floods here came with Hurricane Helene in September. It blew down an estimated 187,000 acres of forest in western North Carolina. In 2022, the Biden administration issued an executive order to protect old-growth forests on public land from the effects of climate change. The Forest Service then got to work on what's become known as the National Old Growth Amendment. Harlan says he had high hopes for it.
One thing about the Old Growth Amendment is it really emphasized the pressure that these forests are under because of climate change.
2.5 years later, after a lot of research and public input, the amendment was shelved. It would have set policy for all national forests on how to manage old growth in light of changing weather patterns. In an email, Forest Service officials did not give a reason for their action, but said they hoped their findings could still be helpful. John Hatcher of the North Carolina State Forestry Association was glad the amendment is on hold. He says it was confusing and didn't allow enough logging around older trees.
When you look at the U.S. Forest Service having over 200 definitions for old growth, it makes it really hard to have something like a universal framework that can be used across the Forest Service's footprint.
It's true old growth means different things in different regions. Most of the old growth east of the Mississippi is in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Out west, old growth is much older. Hatcher says there needs to be room on Forest Service land for recreation and logging.
You can still manage it in a sustainable way that strikes that balance and allows all those other uses while at the same time maintaining a healthy landscape.
But with a changing climate, that's hard to do, says Kelly. If you log too many young trees, it weakens the older ones in extreme weather.
Resilience to storms and blowdowns often depends on the forest around them. So the more of a forest that you have surrounding these bigger, older trees, the more buffered they are from winds and storms.
Without federal protection from climate change, the fight to save this old-growth forest will now go local. Kelly and Harlan say they are already gearing up to protect the Pisgah Forest from a logging project. For NPR News, I'm Katie Myers in Barnardsville, North Carolina.
This is NPR News.
This is News 88.7. I'm Brenda Valdivia. Tonight's low around 27 degrees. A winter storm warning is in effect, and tonight a cold weather advisory as well, as temperatures are expected to drop to the mid-20s tomorrow, high only in the mid-30s. You can expect sleet and freezing rain throughout, possible snow as well. Gust of winds as high as 30 miles per hour throughout the city of Houston is advising to take care. This is News 88.7, your NPR station.
There's more to the story at HoustonPublicMedia.org. From in-depth coverage of issues affecting all Texans to informing you about the latest breaking news, we prioritize exceptional reporting that's always available on your favorite device. Join us daily for political news that puts substance over sensationalism and community news that shines a light on voices across Houston and beyond. Anytime, anywhere, there's always more to the story at HoustonPublicMedia.org.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, Antiques Roadshow continues an all-new season in Bentonville, Arkansas, with appraisals at the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art. Tonight at 7 on TV8 or stream on the PBS app. Houston Public Media is a service of the University of Houston and is supported with your gifts to the Houston Public Media Foundation. More information available online at HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate.
Support comes from Foster LLP, providing immigration legal services for artists, entertainers, and athletes pursuing talent-based immigration options. More at fosterglobal.com, U.S. and global immigration services. And Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods, Texas, family-owned and operated since 1962, offering a large selection of wines, spirits, and beers to choose from. Details at specsonline.com. The fun starts here. This is News 88.7.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Elsa Che.
And I'm Juana Summers. It's been years since we've heard from singer Yola, and she says that's by design.
I actually took a bit of time out to get a life. That's why you haven't heard from me. Because I didn't have a life. I was like, I was like all work and no play made Jill a very dull girl. And so, yeah. So I sorted out, like I sorted my whole life out. It wasn't sorted out. And now I've actually built this thing called a life, which really makes this whole rest of music start making sense.
Making music is something she's been doing for years. Early on, it was with the group Bugs in the Attic. The group's music was heavily influenced by jazz, funk, and soul music. Sounds, she says, shaped this project.
So this is me writing it for myself with, 80s soul energy, with disco energy, with funk energy. That's what I'm trying to do with this EP. You can definitely hear that in Ready.
When we spoke, she told me about the inspiration for that song.
Ready as a song is largely inspired by the Windrush generation. My mother was part of the Windrush generation of people that came over from the Caribbean to the UK because, Europeans broadly lost a lot of people in the Second World War. And as a result of that, they were constantly trying to fill positions. And they coaxed people out of arguably paradise. And I'd grow up and people would say, I grew up in a little village outside of Bristol, in the southwest of England. And I get told, go home, go back to where you came from. And with all of that kind of preemptive narrative of, coming from paradise to somewhere rainy and miserable where people tell you to go home, and at least the impetus was to be helpful. It's like, ugh, you're having a laugh, aren't you? song came out of, this idea of actually, do you know what? You're a genius. If you're going to buy me a flight to Accra, make it in December so I can catch Burna Boy or something like that, please. And like, and so it was like, you're telling me to go back to paradise. That sounds like a wonderful deal. And so that song came out of like this idea of turning something that was supposed to be like an insult, like a go back to where you came from, into a, actually, I should. It's a brilliant idea.
You've got to be ready, ready, get your things and stand on the Jenny Jenny. You've got to be ready, ready, rock your back, sweet me on the Jenny Jenny.
You know, Yola, I have to say, as I was listening to this EP, it seemed to be infused with this idea of claiming your agency, starting with that title track, My Way. And you really seem to be sending a message in that song. What's the message and who's it for?
The message is, I have to negotiate to be centered in my own experience of my own life. And people forget that, you know, when you're doing music it takes over a lot of your life. And when people kind of go, oh, we want to be able to interact with you as an artist, but not really center you, I'm just going to have to do this my way. I'm going to have to find a way to get you to act in a way that does not massively violate all of my boundaries, because you don't understand consent. You don't understand collaboration. And so that's really like what that song is for.
About another song on the EP, and that's the song Future Enemies.
I know you're feeling how you're feeling, it's a stone cold bitch, this temptation.
Feels like, when I listen to it at least, it's the song about seeing and appreciating and swerving and avoiding those red flags and people you come across. Can you tell us about it?
Just, it dawned on me kind of in the opposite breath of My Way. My Way is like, oh God, I'm stuck here. But Future Enemy is like, you've just met them. And at this point in time, if you've noticed that you're not going to get on, you have the profound privilege to get out of the situation without making a brand new enemy. It's possible, so you just don't need to go that deep. You can get out. It's totally possible to just have a nice interaction and then go like, wow, okay, that was a red flag, but you know what I'm gonna do? Instead of manufacturing a brand new enemy out of thin air for no reason, because it ain't that deep, just be like, cool, that was really great, yeah, all right, and then literally, poof, David Copperfield.
Typically when we end these conversations, we end them with a song. So I'd like to ask you from your EP, what song should we go out on and why?
Well, we haven't talked about Temporary yet, and maybe that's the one that we need to go out on.
You're exactly the kind of guy that I always want to try.
Temporary is a song about, can I swear on this, Spooky?
We might have to bleep it.
Okay, so bleep it. I'm going to say it. You ready? Got your bleep button ready?
I'm ready.
Get your finger horror. There you go. It's about... There you go. There you go. Beep, boys. And it's about how, like, they have a use. Would you believe?
Go on.
I know, you're like... I love the suspicious voice and like, go on? Really? Yes. In that, when you're dating seriously, that could be exhausting. Your hopes get built up, dashed, built up, dashed, built up, dashed, built up. After a while, that's just exhausting. Who can go through that continually? Sometimes you need to date someone who you know is utterly useless, other than they're just pretty. I love singing this song because it just makes me laugh. Like all the lyrics kind of just make me chuckle because it's a little bit like you're saying to the babe, at some point this ain't gonna be cute, but you know, let's get what we can out of this. And then I'll go back to my life, which is seriously dating. And you'll go back to your life, which is being utterly vapid.
Yola, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much.
We've been talking with Yola. Her new EP is My Way. It's out now.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from Mathnasium, committed to making math fun and building confidence so students can achieve their potential this school year, offering customized math instruction and individual attention to students in grades K through 12. Mathnasium.com. From Procter & Gamble, maker of Metamucil, a fiber supplement containing psyllium, a plant-based fiber for trapping and removing waste in the digestive system, designed to be taken every day. More at Metamucil.com. From Progressive Insurance, Progressive is looking for individuals in a variety of career fields who want to help build a culture of inclusiveness. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers. And from listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Support Houston Public Media by donating a vehicle you no longer need. We'll take it in any condition. It's free to you, easy to do, and it could mean hundreds of dollars in support. Visit HoustonPublicMedia.org/cars to learn more. Thanks.
This is News 88.7. I'm Brenda Valdivia. There is a winter storm warning in effect for tonight. Tonight's low around 27 degrees. Northeast winds with gusts as high as 30 miles per hour. Snow showers, freezing rain, and sleet are likely before 4 a.m. Tomorrow's highs in the mid-30s before an extreme cold watch is in effect tomorrow night. Low around 20 degrees, mostly clear skies. It's currently 37 degrees and overcast here at the University of Houston. 45 southbound at Hardy Toll in Montgomery County has an accident. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's now 6 o'clock.
During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
President Trump has taken the oath of office for a second time and has been sworn in as the 47th president.
It's Monday, January 20th, and this is All Things Considered from NPR News.
I'm Elsa Chang.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. Cecile Richards, former president of Planned Parenthood, has died at the age of 67.
You want to give in to the weariness, and you want to give in to just giving up. And when I'm tempted to feel that way, I think about Cecile.
Also, today is the first full day of a new ceasefire in Gaza. Hamas has handed over 3 Israeli hostages.
And a conversation with Timothy Chalamet about playing Bob Dylan in the movie A Complete Unknown.
You hear the iron ore in his voice. You hear the North Country blues when he talks. I don't want to lose any part of that.
Those stories after this news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. After the pomp and ceremony of a traditional inauguration, President Donald Trump appearing before thousands of citizens who placed him in office for a second term. Trump attending a rally at Washington's Capital One Arena, where a crowd had been waiting for hours for their glimpse of the 47th president. And in an unusual bit of stagecraft, a small desk was set up for Trump to sign some of the numerous executive actions being put in place.
I'm going to sign a presidential memorandum directing every member of my cabinet to marshal every power at their disposal to defeat inflation and rapidly bring down the cost of daily life.
The event was billed as an indoor parade after inauguration of activities were moved indoors due to cold weather in the nation's capital. Trump signed orders that would rescind Biden-era policies, freeze federal hiring except for the military, and withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. President Trump's pledge to focus on immigration and border security has had an immediate impact for some migrants waiting on Mexico's border with the U.S. NPR's Ada Peralta has that story.
Almost as soon as Donald Trump became President Trump, the phone application that allows migrants appointments to seek asylum in the United States went down. Existing appointments scheduled through CBP1 are no longer valid, the phones flashed. Margelis Tinoco had been waiting for an appointment for 6 months, and the news broke her. She knelt on the ground at the foot of the international bridge that leads to El Paso, and she wept. My God, when I thought everything was solved, it all comes crumbling down, she said. Ada Peralta, NPR News, Juarez, Mexico.
As President Trump was speaking at the Capitol today, now former President Joe Biden was giving brief remarks to members of his staff. As NPR's Asma Holloway reports, these were Biden's final comments before leaving Washington on way to California.
Biden told his staff he knows from experience there can be ups and downs in politics, but they can't give up.
We're leaving office. We're not leaving the fight.
Biden thanked his team and encouraged them to stay engaged because the country needs them.
We heard the inaugural address today. We got a lot more to do.
He crossed himself as he referred to Trump's speech. Biden now leaves Washington after 4 years in which he passed some major pieces of legislation. But already on day one, Trump is beginning a series of actions to undo Biden's legacy on immigration, energy, and the economy. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
The Senate has unanimously signed off on President Trump's first cabinet appointment today, confirming Republican Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. Rubio, a longtime member of the Senate Foreign Relations and Intelligence Committees, is a China hawk and has been a staunch backer of Israel. U.S. financial markets are closed. This is NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gail DeLauder. With severe weather alerts now in effect, forecasters say the Houston area could see 1 to 3 inches of snow overnight, with some places in southeast Texas getting up to 6 inches. National Weather Service meteorologist Bradley Brokamp.
Go straight on.
Results in inclement travel conditions until Wednesday morning, as well as we drop well below freezing yet again Tuesday night to Wednesday morning.
Houston is expecting to see a low around 26 tonight, with a high tomorrow near 34. Temperatures tomorrow night could be around 19 degrees. CenterPoint Energy says it has 3,000 workers ready to respond to any outages during the storm, and that includes Galveston. CenterPoint's Darren Carroll.
We've strategically set up these staging sites in the parts of town where we think there could be more damage based on our damage models. We specifically put our crews on the island thinking that they may not be able to traverse the bridge over the causeway, if we needed to be there. So we've got people overnight staying in the hotels.
Carroll says the company has made a lot of infrastructure improvements since Hurricane Beryl last summer. Both of Houston's airports are shutting down tonight because of the weather. Airport System Director Jim Sesniak.
Monday at midnight, we'll be closing the airport. And so that will go through Tuesday. On Tuesday, as we get later into the day and we see what the storm has impacted, that we'll sit with the airlines and we will again update what our plan will be going forward for potentially Wednesday.
Sesniak says the airports have implemented their travel waiver program. That's so travelers can reschedule their flights without being charged a fee. NBA action on MLK Day. The Rockets lost to the Detroit Pistons at Toyota Center 107-96. Those winter storm warnings and a cold weather watch, they're now in effect. Windy tonight, 80% chance of sleet and snow. Overnight low expected near 26 degrees. Snow showers expected early, good chance of precipitation throughout the day, breezy, high on Tuesday around 34 degrees. Clear and windy tomorrow night, low plunging down to 19 degrees. I'm Gail DeLauder, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy. Clients are matched with one of 35,000 therapists and can communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Ari Shapiro in Washington.
And I'm Elsa Chang in Culver City, California. Well, today, Donald Trump was sworn in as President of the United States for the second time.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
In his inaugural speech, the president promised a new beginning for the United States.
The golden age of America begins right now.
Repeating a familiar vow to make America great again, Trump outlined his priorities in the coming days and signaled that he would issue a slew of executive actions.
First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border.
With immigration top of mind, Trump plans to send troops to the border and deport millions of people. He also hopes to end birthright citizenship, a right explicitly protected by the Constitution.
Next, he focused on the economy, saying that he would bring down prices, including the price of energy.
That is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill.
Trump also plans to create what he's calling the External Revenue Service. The goal, he says, is to collect tariffs and other revenues from foreign sources.
Trump then turned to diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in the government, saying he would end government policies created to promote race and gender diversity.
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
President Trump also invoked the history of U.S. colonialism, vowing to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America and restore Alaska's Denali to its previous name, Mount McKinley.
And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars.
And in the end, he returned to the theme he began with of bright days ahead for the U.S.
Nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun.
Well, that was just one of many speeches from President Trump today. And here to break down what we heard and saw is NPR national political correspondent Mara Allison. Hi, Mara.
Hi there.
All right, so what were your biggest takeaways from Trump's inaugural address?
One of them was that there was a lot of continuity from his 2017 speech. This really was American Carnage 2.0. He said the government has a crisis of trust. It's a radical and corrupt establishment. He said he has a mandate to completely reverse a horrible betrayal. He said the government can no longer deliver basic services. He went on to say never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to prosecute political opponents, even though that's exactly what he's proposed to do, using the Department of Justice and the FBI to exact, quote, revenge and retribution against his enemies.
Right.
But it was also a grandiose speech, and I mean that in the technical definition of grandiose. It was excessively ambitious and exaggerating. He said, our power will stop all wars. He said, we're going to have prosperity like we've never had before. He also talked about the Panama Canal, and he said, we're going to take it back.
And also, he said at one point in the speech that he wanted to be a unifier and a peacemaker, right? Like, what do you think he meant by that?
I'm not sure, because this speech was not a unity speech. He did define unity at one point. He said, quote, the entire nation is unifying behind our administration. So it sounds like he defines unity as support for him, kind of like a continuation of I alone can fix it. But there wasn't an olive branch to the other side. There were no bipartisan appeals. It was very base-oriented. He said today is Liberation Day. So this is Trump unfettered. He controls all three branches of government. You could argue he also has the new media on his side, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg up there, prominently seated with Jeff Bezos. So this is someone who feels he has a pretty free rein. He did make a comment. He reached out to the Black and Hispanic voters that voted for him. He said he looks forward to working with them.
I mean, it's obvious, but we should just state, yes, I mean, he did win, and Republicans control Congress and the White House. So in terms of unity, isn't unity his already to claim?
Well, that's what you'd think. He's a legitimate president. He won a sweeping and decisive election. He won the popular vote. He has the power, as you said, to do pretty much what he wants. The only question is how much of this very ambitious agenda will the American people hold him to? In other words, do they care if he brings down prices or not, or if their energy bill is cut in half in a year as he's promised? We don't know.
Well, he certainly hit the ground running, right? Like, what has he done already? Just catch us up.
The White House has issued a lot of executive actions, some of which you heard him talk about in those bites. Sometimes executive orders are nothing more than press releases, but others do carry the force of law, assuming they withstand a court challenge, and he did talk about them in his address. No more asylum program, no more refugee program. He declared a national emergency at the southern border. He's going to have the biggest deportation, millions of criminal aliens. He's going to send troops to the border. He's designated the Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. He wants to end birthright citizenship, which is enshrined in the Constitution. And he also wants to end what he called the EV mandate. He said, you'll be able to buy the car of your choice now. I think that will come as a surprise to many people. They're buying the car of their choice.
A lot already, and there's more to come, right? Well, after his inaugural address, Trump spoke to his supporters in the Capitol. Let's take a listen.
2020, by the way, that election was totally rigged. He said that's okay. It was a rigged election. You know, the only thing good about it, it showed how bad they are, showed how incompetent.
What do we make of those remarks? It's a rigged election.
For the most part, he kept his gripes at bay in the inaugural address. But once he was in that less formal setting, he reverted to his list of grievances. He falsely called the 2020 election rigged. Even now, he's won the popular vote and had a decisive victory. He's still relitigating the 2020 election. He wants to rewrite the history of January 6th, so his supporters who stormed the U.S. Capitol become what he called patriots and hostages, not convicted criminals. Here's what he said.
I was going to talk about the J6 hostages, but you'll be happy because, you know, it's action, not words that count. And you're going to see a lot of action on the J6 hostages.
So this really shows you the extent to which his actions could weaken democratic institutions, including the justice system. We don't know how many of the January 6th convicted criminals, including some who viciously beat police officers on the steps of the Capitol, he plans to pardon, but these are people who were convicted by a jury of their peers for ransacking the Capitol in an effort to overturn a free and fair election, and pardoning them would be the first step Trump could take to undermine the rule of law.
That is NPR's Mara Allison. Thank you so much, Mara.
Thank you.
Today marks the first full day of a new ceasefire in Gaza aimed at ending the war that's dragged on for more than 15 months. Last night, Israel released 90 Palestinian prisoners and detainees just outside of Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. They were released hours after Hamas handed over 3 Israeli hostages who had been kept in Gaza since the October 7th attacks that triggered the war. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf is in Ramallah and was at that prisoner release last night. Hi, Kat.
Hey there.
What was the scene like last night?
Yeah, it was a really celebratory scene. You know, there were families and hundreds of people there waving Palestinian flags. People were draped in traditional keffiyeh scarves. There were kids, there were balloons, they were eating sweets. People were celebrating not just the release of their loved ones, but also the hopeful end to a brutal and devastating war for Palestinians in Gaza. But it was a long, long wait. People were waiting 7-8 hours outside in the cold.
Wow.
The detainees were finally released around 2 a.m., and then it just erupted into chaos as they were greeted and hugged and hoisted onto shoulders.
What can you tell us about who these people are?
So it was mostly women of all ages, and then some boys under the age of 18 released last night, according to the Palestinian Prisoners Association. All of the people released this time were arrested after the war began in Gaza in 2023. The number of Palestinians detained in Israeli jails has more or less doubled since the war began in Gaza. Many, but certainly not all of them, were being held in what's known as administrative detention. That's an ambiguous situation without a sentence or trial. I talked to several family members last night waiting for mothers or daughters who described situations like that, saying that they weren't really sure what their loved one had been arrested for and hadn't been able to get any information. Like Ala Malawani, she was waiting for her 23-year-old daughter to be released. She told me that 5 months ago, Israeli soldiers stormed into their house in the middle of the night, accusing her daughter of posting things on social media in support of Gaza. She said she hadn't been allowed any contact with her daughter since. You know, that's not to say that there aren't people with very serious charges also being released in these prisoner and detainee releases, but many of those are expected in coming weeks.
What have you learned about the conditions in Israeli jails for Palestinians right now?
I've talked to Israeli and Palestinian human rights groups who monitor this, and also several recently released Palestinians from Israeli jails, and all have described very harsh conditions. All say that they've gotten significantly worse since the war in Gaza began. We're talking not enough food, not adequate clothing, very crowded and unclean cells, and it's become difficult, if not impossible, to get legal help. International monitoring groups are not allowed access either. Israel's prison service has defended its treatment of Palestinian prisoners and say that they have a right to file a complaint if they feel otherwise.
As you mentioned, there's a lot more to come in this ceasefire deal. This is the first of several planned releases of hostages and prisoners. So what comes next?
So the ceasefire appears to be holding for its first full day in Gaza, like you said. There's been a surge in humanitarian aid that has entered Gaza, somewhere around 1,000 trucks since the ceasefire went into effect yesterday, and that should continue. Meanwhile, the next hostage and prisoner exchange should be next weekend. We're still waiting on the exact details of that. And negotiations to extend this deal past this initial 6-week phase should begin in the coming weeks.
NPR's Kat Lonsdorf in Ramallah. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we brace for cold weather, join the new Hello Houston team as we bring you complete coverage of the first major winter storm of 2025.
I'm meteorologist Frank Billingsley. Don't get caught out. Have a plan and continue to monitor the conditions right here on News 88.7. Join me and the new Hello Houston team, Ernie Manous and Celestia Sherman, as we keep you updated on the latest information on the winter storm.
That's Tuesday, Hello Houston Winter Storm special coverage right here on News 88.7 starting at 10 a.m.
I'm Jeremy Hobson. As Donald Trump retakes the White House, a lot is about to change in America, from immigration and foreign policy to economic strategy and social issues. We want to hear from you on a special Inauguration Night edition of The Middle. Two top journalists will join us as we take your calls at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Join us on a special edition of The Middle.
That's The Middle, tonight at 8 here on News 88.7.
Support comes from Cypress Creek Face, presenting Asleep at the Wheel, February 8th, led by Ray Benson. Asleep at the Wheel has been performing their old-style roots Americana swing music over 50 years. Tickets at cypresscreekface.org.
Support comes from Sand & Sea Properties, celebrating over 50 years as a Galveston Island real estate company specializing in vacation homes, primary residences, home sites, and historic properties. Details at sandandsea.com. And the Guide to Good Divorce Seminars, created by attorney Trey Yates to help women navigate the divorce process. Saturday, February 1st at the St. Regis Hotel. Registration at guidetogooddivorce.com/radio. And givemethevin.com. Purchasing vehicles online with the VIN or license plate and photos, or by bringing the vehicle to Houston area offices. Details at givemethevin.com. This is News 88.7. It's 6:20.
Exit right. Support for NPR comes from this station and from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. And from the Kauffman Foundation, providing access to opportunities that help people achieve financial stability, upward mobility, and economic prosperity, regardless of race, gender, or geography. Kauffman.org. This is NPR.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Ari Shapiro.
And I'm Elsa Chang. The new biopic, A Complete Unknown, is a snapshot of Bob Dylan in the early 1960s. From his days playing coffee houses in Greenwich Village.
Carina, girl, what's on your mind?
To his controversial show at the Newport Folk Festival, leading a brash, electrified band. Timothy Chalamet plays Bob Dylan. He looks and talks like Dylan.
200 people in that room. Each one wants me to be somebody else. They should just let me be.
And yeah, he strums and sings like Dylan, too. And the film's director, James Mangold, I asked if it was hard to write Bob Dylan as a character on the page, since he's such a widely mythologized figure. Here's Mangold.
You try and throw away this kind of public perception. You know, it's not that it's wrong or right. It's just these words, mystery, enigma, blah, blah, blah. Because the guy's written 55 albums, right? And toured the world for 60 years. So he's not exactly Howard Hughes. He's giving us books, poetry, screenplays, movies, novels, autobiographies, Christmas albums, you name it, he's put it out. And so the thirst... And yet we want more.
Still regards him as cryptic.
Yeah.
Well, Timothy, I read that you thought you would only have about 4 months to prepare for this role, but because of COVID, 4 months stretched into 5 years. I mean, like, how relieved were you that you got to spend so much more time thinking about Dylan, studying him, imagining being him?
Well, the relief was in relation to how much I kept learning.
Yeah.
You know, what was initially 4 months and where I thought I would have the advantage of playing Bob not as a member of the Church of Bob in the sense that I wasn't one of these mega fans yet, turned into a 5-year process where I feel I've almost turned over every stone available to me now.
I mean, just so people understand, you had to learn how to sing like Dylan, talk like Dylan, play guitar like Dylan, play harmonica like him, walk and move like him. What was the hardest?
I don't know. It was really a process of osmosis. You know, I don't have categories. I don't have a ruler with different sections of stuff that I'm learning. I really try to do it all at once. And my way in was the music. I love this man's music. These are the songs of life.
Finally, we are here.
He's one of the great American artists of our time.
Let alone the idea that it would be Bob Dylan's real voice coming out of Timmy's mouth, which would be
so weird.
It would be so weird. Like in early conversations, when like some people in the kind of executive-y kind of positions and producer positions were nervous, I'd be like, just visualize what you're even talking about.
I mean, it's almost more sacrilegious, yeah.
Yeah, but what you have to also recognize is we're making a movie about folk music predominantly, and what is folk music if not authenticity, directness, intensity, honesty? Yeah. It doesn't take any particular bravery on my part, just common sense, really.
I totally get that, but Timothy, I imagine one of the most daunting challenges of portraying someone as well-known and as revered as Bob Dylan is that audiences will expect you to be believable as Bob Dylan. I mean, even Bob Dylan recently posted on X, quote, "Timmy's a brilliant actor, so I'm sure he's going to be completely believable as me, or a younger me, or some other me." How did you decide, Timmy, what version of Bob Dylan you were going to be without offering a caricature of him?
Well, first of all, I love that post, and I love that post because it's so in Bob's voice, and there was no intellectual decision. Again, I love how Jim put it. This is a movie about folk music and folk musicians. The authenticity needs to be felt. My fear was that you would feel the Purell in a Hollywood reproduction of this period.
Sanitized.
And just sort of watered down and crystallized and made sing-songy where it was raw. Bob Dylan had a very bad case of bronchitis in his early 20s that helped make his voice sound the way it is. You hear the iron ore in his voice. You hear the North Country blues when he talks. So I didn't want to lose any part of that.
I understand you never got a chance to meet Dylan, right, Timothy? Or talk to him when preparing for this role. Why not? Like, did you want to and he said no?
Yeah, I wanted to. I was careful about the way I reached out and not to be presumptuous. I saw him live. I've seen him live twice. And that was, I don't want to say helpful enough. It would have been great to, but it was super educational just to see his energy observed from a distance,
But did he not want to meet with you, or like what was that? Or was that a deliberate
I don't think it's as clear as that. I'll let Jim speak to it, or Jeff Rosen, Bob's manager. But my honest feeling is, as Jim said before, we've gotten something like 55 albums from this man. His contribution to the American artistic scene of the last 60 years is monumental. So if I ever did meet him, I would just say thank you. And not thank you for the role, not thank you for the opportunity, thank you for your work.
Well, Jim, you did get to meet Dylan, right? And the way I understand it, you met with him several times to get his take on the script. Is that correct?
Well, and it came out of happenstance. And 3 or 4 times we spent a half day together alone in a coffee shop during lockdown. I felt from the beginning, sitting down with him, that he saw in the script and the entire intention of our endeavor was pure.
It is sort of interesting to me that Bob Dylan was so cooperative in this project, because he does seem like someone who has conflicting feelings about fame, and I would have imagined a biopic being kind of an uncomfortable idea for him, no?
Yes, I mean, I think Dylan recognized that there was a lack of a kind of agenda to demonize anybody, but just to kind of look straight at everything and let it play.
James Mangold co-wrote and directed the new film, A Complete Unknown. Timothy Chalamet stars in the movie. It's in theaters now. Thank you both so much for sharing this time with me.
Thank you.
This is News at 8/7.
Donations come in many forms: a monthly membership, a one-time gift, and that extra vehicle you no longer need. We take any kind of vehicle in any condition. Learn more at houstonpublicmedia.org/cars. And thank you.
Support comes from UT Health Houston, home to Dr. Ramesha Papana and the Fetal Center team, who pioneered a prenatal patch to help babies with spina bifida walk earlier and better. More at uth.edu/manyfaces.
Support also comes from Rice University's Master of Liberal Studies, combining an interdisciplinary Rice education with a flexible degree plan for working adults. More at gls.rice.edu. And Signify Business Cash by Wells Fargo. With this business credit card, cardholders can earn rewards on business purchases with no caps or categories to track. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/signify. Terms apply. This is News 88.7. It's 6:30.
Get ready to turn left.
Marketplace is supported by Clear Channel Outdoor, offering a nationwide network of billboards and data solutions that help businesses build brand awareness and influence consumer behavior. Billboardsforbusiness.com.
Well, here we go. Again, from American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Solidigm. Today's AI ambitions require a different approach to storage. Solidigm offers solid-state storage solutions optimized for AI with higher capacities, greater speed, and energy efficiency. StorageForAI.com. And by Bitwarden, with a reminder that the best way to celebrate Data Privacy Week is with a password manager trusted by millions. Bitwarden is designed to keep sensitive information private and secure across all devices and accounts. Learn more at bitwarden.com.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Rizdal. It is Monday today, the 20th of January. Good as always to have you along, everybody. We have arrived at day one of the second Trump term. There are twists and turns aplenty ahead, to be sure. But we are going to take a couple of minutes here to set the economic stage for the next 4 years. Sudeep Reddy is at Politico. He also moonlights with us on Fridays every now and then. Hey, Sudeep.
Hey, Kai. Happy Monday, I think.
Happy Monday, I think. So, look, let's benchmark this here for a second. Despite what the president, I almost called him president-elect, despite what the president said in his inaugural address today, the American economy is strong. Yes, prices are elevated, but by and large, this economy is the envy of the world.
Yeah, President Trump could come into office right now and start talking about how we have low unemployment, record oil production, lower border crossings than we had when he left office, a whole host of things. And just by being a better communicator than his predecessor was, he could take credit for all of this and probably make people believe it. He maybe reduced the regulations a little bit across the board and just call it a day. In fact, he did a lot of that the first time around 4 years ago when he came into office, 8 years ago when he came into office, and people believed it. So really, the question is how much he wants to just claim that everything is better because he's in place. How much does he really want to change?
Speaking of claiming things, he says we're going to drill, baby, drill, even though the United States produces more oil and gas now than any other country on the planet. He said he's going to set up a Department of External Revenue to collect tariff income, even though, as we all know, American consumers pay those tariffs. So there was some disinformation in there.
There's a lot that the president is going to say, and as usual, we have to watch what he does. What he does on tariffs, he came right out this morning, his team did, and said, well, maybe we're not going to do these on day one. We'll see if he does them on day two when he's got access to his social media accounts and what that means. But enacting tariffs across the board, as he has said many times he would do, right when he takes office, will potentially raise inflation. It will cause currency ripples around the world, and that could blow back on us. If he wants to cut off workers coming in from other countries, then there's a possible shortage of workers, and that could raise inflation at the low end. There are a lot of things that could happen if he actually carries through on his promises, and we don't know yet because we have not tried a lot of these things in quite a while.
Yeah, so put on your Jay Powell hat for me here for a second, and talk to me about what the central bank does when a new administration's policies are inherently inflationary, whether it's limiting the labor supply or increasing the cost of goods. Jay Powell's looking at this going, man, I just got done with inflation and now you're doing this.
Every time we see one of these actions, it will raise the expectation that interest rates will have to stay higher to deal with a potential resurgence of inflation, or the fact that inflation is not dropping quickly enough. And that will start a war, as it had before, between a rhetorical war between the president and the Fed chair. And that could upset bond markets as well. There are a lot of different factors that go into what drives borrowing costs, and this is one of them. And we've seen this before.
Real quick, I had this conversation with Catherine on Friday, but I'd love your take. It seems to me that, just a couple of presidents ago, they had a little leeway in how long they had to be in office before they were responsible for the economy. It was 3 months, 6 months. Presidents get too much credit, too much blame. Seems to me that Trump is on the hook for this economy.
Go straight on.
He can decide to take it slow and gradually implement some of these policies. But if he wants to come in right now and do day one actions, then it becomes his, because you can actually put a marker on when we have the data still, at least for now, to mark what the changes look like. And it will be very apparent if he does a lot of these things rapidly and disrupts the general flow of the economy and of business. But he could also do things that he could take it slow and do things gradually, that some businesses want to see, and maybe avoid some of the upset. So it's a choice, and we're going to find out, I think, within days or weeks what that choice is.
Sudeep Reddy at Politico on this Inauguration Day 2025. Sudeep, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kai.
Talk to you soon. Wall Street was off today for the Martin Luther King holiday. We will think of something to say, though, when we do the numbers. As I said, both U.S. equity and bond traders had the day off today, but as of quitting time last Friday, the market for American government debt, that is Treasury bills, bonds, and notes, stood at roughly $28 trillion. As we've been telling you, bond yields have been rising for months now. In September, the yield on the 10-year Treasury note was 3.6%. Now, 4.63%. And those rising yields aren't just happening here. Germany, the UK, and Japan, too, have on the whole seen bond yields going up. The reason we talk about the bond market as much as we do is that it can offer hints of our economic future. So what do you suppose it means that yields are rising in so many places all at once? Marketplace's Sabri Benishore is on.
Whether they're treasuries in the U.S. or gilts in the U.K. or bunds in Germany, bonds are literally loans to a government. Loans for a long time, loans for a short time.
You can buy 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30-year bonds.
Sonal Desai is Chief Investment Officer at Franklin Templeton Fixed Income. You can even lend the government money for a very short time.
3-month T-bills, 6-month T-bills.
The government, of course, pays you interest, so there's a payoff for owning one of these things. That's the yield. And over the past few months, the bond market, that is all the people and firms buying bonds out there, they have been walking away from longer-term bonds because they've decided the yields were too low.
It's been a pretty significant move to higher yields.
Gargipal Chowdhury is Chief Investment and Portfolio Strategist for the Americas at BlackRock. Investors have been demanding higher yields on a 10-year bond now because their vision of the economy for the next 10 years has changed.
So if you think back to the beginning of this year, all of the data, the totality of the data, whether it be on the labor market, the sentiment surveys, all of them have been pointing to a stronger U.S. economy.
A stronger U.S. economy still grappling with inflation.
Inflation is going to be higher than people had thought.
Gershon Distenfeld is Director of Income Strategies at AllianceBernstein. A future strong economy with stubborn inflation residue means higher interest rates, higher returns on something like a 3-month treasury down the road. But bond investors today are going to miss out on that rosy future if their money is locked up in a decade-long loan to the government that isn't offering enough interest. That is one reason why the bond market has been insisting that long-term yields go up. But all of this is the U.S. And longer-term bond yields have been going up all over the world. Again, Gargipal Chaudhry at BlackRock.
There is not just a US story in higher rates, but this is Australia story and Italy story of France, the UK, Canada have seen higher rates.
Some of it is coincidence, she says, but some of it is not, says Franklin Templeton's Sonal Desai.
When US rates go up, it tends to attract capital from the rest of the world. So you might see people exiting German bonds to put money into US treasuries.
When people do that, the German bonds, in a sense, have to compete, and their yields go up too. So that's part of what's going on. But another part of the global rise in bond yields is anxiety.
It's also the uncertainty that the world's largest economy could change its trade policies rather radically in the spring.
David Krauss is Professor Emeritus of Finance at Marquette University.
If some of the threats of tariffs and major changes in trade policies come to fruition, some of the countries that are very reliant on trading with the U.S. have increased risk.
If foreign bonds now look more risky, those yields go up, kind of like how a bad credit score makes a mortgage more expensive. But as bond yields around the world have risen, Krauss says there is a bigger picture here.
The era of cheap money is coming to an end.
Bond yields filter out far into an economy. Higher yields make borrowing more expensive, not just for governments, but for companies, people buying homes. For many years, we got used to low interest rates, and Krauss says those days are gone. In New York, I'm Sabri Benishore for Marketplace.
Caution, please mind the speed limit. Keep left, and then exit left. Exit left.
The weather forecast here in LA is most definitely not what we want to hear. More wind, lots of it, it looks like, which the National Weather Service is calling a, quote, particularly dangerous situation, with gusts approaching 100 miles an hour up in the mountains and the foothills. The count to date for the Palisades and Eaton fires is more than 15,000 structures destroyed, a sizable chunk of which were people's homes, which is in turn having a ripple effect on the Los Angeles housing market and beyond. Here's Marketplace's Matt Levin.
Los Angeles realtor Lexi Newman used to help a lot of home buyers find their foot in the LA housing market in Altadena in East LA County. According to Zillow, the median home value there was over $1 million, which by LA standards...
It was, on the more affordable side of things here and also very lovely. And there's a burgeoning kind of scene of, fantastic restaurants and coffee shops and all kinds of things.
Altadena was ravaged by the Eaton fire. Newman has 5 clients who lost their homes there. While it's still early, her gut says the sudden disappearance of semi-affordable supply won't help buyers in nearby markets like Pasadena or Alhambra.
We already had an inventory problem and an inventory shortage, so supply and demand is very possibly going to shift and have housing become more expensive than it already is.
About 62 miles southeast of Altadena is Moreno Valley, an LAX far enough away from the fires to avoid any real damage. But local realtor Kama Burton expects to see some pretty immediate economic fallout.
My biggest concern is the insurance, because I believe that's where the ripple effect will come.
Burton says homeowners insurance has become so expensive, it's already a focal point of buyer-seller negotiations, just like closing costs. Sadly, we do have some precedent here for how we can expect the LA fires to impact other housing markets over time. After the 2017 wine country fires in the Bay Area, Sacramento realtor Aaron Stump started getting calls from fire victims looking for more affordable options a good 100 miles away from where they used to live.
Most of the people that I talked to wanted to be in suburbia where there was low fire risk,
definitely far away from any high or moderate fire hazard areas.
Those low-risk areas are increasingly tough to find now. I'm Matt Levin for Marketplace.
Coming up,
2025 is probably going to be one of the craziest times for sneakers.
So, sneakers too, I guess. First, though, let's do the numbers. U.S. markets, as I said, were closed today in observance for the Martin Luther King Jr. Day holiday. President Trump, he said this morning he's going to declare a national energy emergency, giving him authority to increase U.S. energy production and potentially drill, baby, drill. As he said that, despite the fact that the United States produces more oil and gas now than any country on the planet. Brent crude down 1% today, $79.94 a barrel. Gold fell 0.6%. Over in Europe, Britain's FTSE stepped up 0.2%. The CAC 40, Paris up 0.3%. Germany's DAX advanced about 0.4%. The dollar fell today. Euro was $1.04 per. The UK pound is worth about $1.23. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Glassdoor, announcing the best places to work in 2025 based on anonymous reviews from real employees. Learn who's leading the way in workplace culture and employee satisfaction, and see who's hiring at Glassdoor.com. And by BetterHelp, committed to making mental well-being a priority and offering support in taking on everything life demands, with therapists available to communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public.
Support comes from Decamera, presenting French pianist Alexander Kontarov, performing music of Brahms, Liszt, Rachmaninoff, and more in his first Houston appearance, January 28th at Wortham Center. Tickets at Decamera.com.
Support also comes from the In-Print Brown Reading Series, presenting award-winning author Yuri Herrera with his new novel, Season of the Swamp, January 27th, 7:30 p.m. at the Alley Theater. More at inprint.org. And HealthLink Advisors, preparing hospitals for cyber attacks and resulting downtime with clinical-led business continuity services designed to ensure continuous patient care and operations. More at healthlinkadvisors.com. And Carr, Riggs, and Ingram CPAs and Advisors, a top 25 nationally ranked full-service accounting and advisory firm, offering tax, audit, accounting, consulting, and advisory services. Learn more at cricpa.com. You're listening to News 88.7, your NPR station.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Rizdal. This is a light-ish week for economic data. Just a couple of B-list releases coming out the next couple of days. First-time claims for unemployment benefits, reports also on housing and consumers. But there is something else to be said about the data, a trend that we've noticed over the past couple of months, that a lot of big economic reports, A-listers, if you will, have been affected not by the fundamentals of what's going on in this economy, but by noise, whether it's big weather events like storms and hurricanes, or labor strikes, or optimism about the new administration's policies, or concerns about said policies. Marketplace's Justin Ho looked into how all that's been affecting how we measure this economy and how economists have been wading through the muck.
The thing about noise, whether it's literal noise or the figurative kind, is that it can be distracting. Like if construction or home sales surge in the months after a natural disaster.
You would never take that as a trend because you can't judge the economy just from that one rebound.
That's Jennifer Lee, senior economist with BMO Capital Markets. She says a really noisy factor lately has been the prospect of new tariffs, because while some businesses have been loading up on inventory, for example,
it could be reflecting businesses' expectations of tariffs. It may not be a reflection of consumer demand.
Another factor muddying the economic picture recently is survey data of consumers, manufacturers, and small businesses. Tim Dewey, chief U.S. economist at SGH Macro Advisors, says people's answers are heavily influenced by their political preferences.
The Democratic respondents see a larger increase in inflation going forward, and the Republican respondents see inflation just disappearing.
Dewey says that's not useful information because people's opinions don't tend to reflect what they actually do.
You know, people might be saying that they think that confidence is down, but if it doesn't change their spending behavior, then their feelings are really not that important.
Economists can always ignore certain sets of data or average it out over several months. George Perks, macro strategist at Bespoke Investment Group, says after the recent hurricanes in the South, he looked at how unemployment claims and home construction in affected states deviated from similar states.
So then we can sort of take into account how big this shock looks like it was and whether that will have a major impact on national economic growth.
And so far, Perks says none of the economic shocks over the last few months has even dented the economy.
For now, what's much more important is a pretty solid labor market, pretty solid wage growth, strong household balance sheets, moderating inflation.
As long as those factors hold steady, Perks says the economy should be fine. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
Here's some data that maybe isn't so murky. 2024 was a tough year for a lot of retailers. Between January and November, about 50 of them filed for bankruptcy protection. In the process, closing more than 7,000 stores. By way of context, that's a nearly 70% increase from the same period a year earlier. The data courtesy of Coresight Research there. You might have heard the phrase, in fact, retail apocalypse, thrown about a little bit. Thing is, consumer spending has been pretty strong, as we've talked about, and we've just been through the biggest holiday sales season yet. So, Marketplace's Kristen Schwab said about trying to square that circle.
The TJ Maxx in Lower Manhattan is buzzing during lunch hour. Callie Connolly is on her break, combing through racks of clothes.
I guess I'm a shopaholic, so I'm at TJ Maxx, just looking around, not for anything in particular.
Are you a Maxxinista, though?
I mean, yes, but I'm not here like every day, but I do really like it here.
Maxxinista is what TJ Maxx calls its dedicated customers. Connolly comes in a couple times a month and says it's one of the few places she still shops in person. On a wall nearby, a sign reads, "New styles arrive weekly. Shouldn't you?"
And there's just always something special and new. I feel like they always have new stuff here.
TJ Maxx is one of those wacky places where you can buy a designer bag, pasta sauce, and a set of silver and gold water bottles in the shape of a croissant. The good deals and constant rotation of new stuff are reasons why discount retailers are doing well right now. TJ Maxx's sales have grown and its stock price has about doubled over the last half-decade. But the mood of the industry at large is moody. Nicole D. Horatius is a professor of practice at Columbia Business School.
I wouldn't say an apocalypse, but I would say a readjustment.
Readjustment is part of the natural churn of business. But the big challenge for retailers right now is they kind of have to be everywhere. Online, in person, and everything in between. They need to offer curbside pickup and easy returns. It's hard to do all of that well.
I was trying to think of the last time I was delighted in a retail shopping experience. And I have to say, it's been quite a while.
You go to a store and the counter is cluttered with returned clothes. You go online to see if the pizza stone you've been eyeing is in stock at your nearest store, only to arrive and find an empty shelf. The integration of online and in-person shopping takes resources away from doing any one thing well.
I think it's totally possible to do all things, right? But the question is it going to just be the companies that have the funding?
Cash. That's why just a few companies have become people's go-to for everything from food to footwear, says Aaron Cheris, who leads the e-commerce division at Bain & Company.
To the victor goes the spoils, right? Like if you sort of looked at retail over the last decade, right, more than half of the growth in U.S. retail has come from Walmart, Amazon, and Costco.
Increasingly in retail, it takes money to make money. So to compete, retailers have to be the best.
The problem is that if you are not what I would call the EST on something,
the EST being the cheapest, fastest, or highest quality,
then it's really hard to win.
If a smaller company wants to win, it has to focus, which brings us back to TJ Maxx, one of the few retailers that gets away with not doing it all, online and in person, and instead leans into offering products that are affordable and special. Callie Connolly, the lunch hour shopper, brags about the best deal she's ever snagged at the store.
I found a light green, I would almost call it pistachio, House of Harlow blazer, and originally I think it's $180. I got it for $50. Favorite thing I've ever owned, for sure. Love it.
It's that thrill that keeps her coming back. In New York, I'm Kristen Schwab for Marketplace.
Kristen was talking about some of the giants in the retail space, right? But you got retail macro, and then you got retail micro. Kellen James is the owner of Silhouette Sneakers and Art in the historic Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma. He bought it almost a year ago, so we gave him a call to hear how things are going.
Right now, you definitely feel like there's this this calm, slow time right now. I don't want to go crazy with getting inventory, but I also am excited. I mean, really, honestly, 2025 is probably going to be one of the craziest times for sneakers. I mean, and as many releases that's gonna happen this year, I'm excited about that, and that's really what's happening right now is me planning out the stuff that I really want to make sure I get a hold of, and just trying to get new inventory that I know people are going to want. It's going to be a continuous thing throughout this whole time, is just to be able to continue to get the word out about Silhouette. I told somebody about a week ago that I want it to be where even if you're not someone that's into sneakers, that you at least know where Silhouette is, what Silhouette is all about. Locally especially. I really am starting to understand that the obligation of being in a brick and mortar and having a business is more about being a part of the community. Finding ways to be a part of the community. We're doing some events, we're doing different kind of events. We've already done one. We started this year, we did a bingo night. That's a great example of that essentially doesn't have anything to do with sneakers or, apparel or anything like that, but it's just a way to be a part of the community and bring people together to have a good time. We're doing more events like that, pop-up shops to kind of highlight local people that are doing fun stuff, and so we want to keep doing stuff like that, and I'm hoping to get good reaction from the community. You have to find different ways to connect with people. That really is my main thing that has stuck out to me the most. It's just stuff in our store can be expensive. You know what I mean? And so I've always had it in my mind that just I want to try to find ways to connect with people. It is more than just about what's on the walls and on the racks.
Kellen James, Silhouette Sneakers and Art, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance, helping protect small businesses and the owners that run them. Whether a plumber, accounting business, or restaurant, Progressive can help with over 30 customizable coverages. Online quotes available in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. And by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to raising awareness and accelerating action on America's fiscal challenges to build a brighter economic future for the next generation. Learn more at pgpf.org.
This final note on the way out, we close on trade policy, of which we will surely be hearing plenty in the 1,461 days to come. From Edinburgh, Scotland today, this item saw this in The Guardian that McSween of Edinburgh, which is Scotland's biggest haggis maker, is going to make a U.S. compliant version of the delicacy. Having been shut out of the U.S. market since 1971, it seems traditional haggis I would not know, by the way, is made with sheep's lung, the use of which is prohibited as a human food. So they're going to make it with sheep heart, which is better. Our daily production team includes Andy Corbin, Nicholas Young, Maria Hollenhorst, Guru Ekbanobi, Sarah Leeson, Sean McHenry, and Sophia Terenzio. If you're Scottish, please don't at me. I'm Kai Rizdal. We will see you tomorrow, everybody. This is APM.
This is News 88.7. I'm Brenda Valdivia. There is a winter storm warning in effect now. Rain showers, freezing rain, sleet, all likely before 4 a.m. and a low around 27 degrees. That winter storm is sticking around tonight through tomorrow. An extreme cold watch is also in effect tomorrow night. It's currently 8:37 and overcast here at the University of Houston. Tonight's low is expected to get somewhere in the low to mid 20s, and tomorrow's high around 34 degrees. Support comes from Austin College, a 4-year liberal arts college offering hands-on research opportunities for students to gain professional experience. You can discover where curiosity leads north of Dallas in Sherman, Texas. More at austincollege.edu. The city of Houston is advising people to protect the 4 Ps. People should dress warmly, pets should be brought indoors, pipes should be insulated, and plants should be covered or brought inside to avoid frost damage. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. I'm out for tonight. I'll be back tomorrow, and I hope you all stay nice and warm and cozy. It's 7 o'clock.
TikTok that's now offering a pop-up message that's thanking Trump for saving the app. And this does feel like quintessential Trump. Welcome back to the Trump administration. He's the rare politician that can kind of hold a contradiction like this.
I'm Sabrina Tavernisi. That's coming up on The Daily from the New York Times.
The Daily is supported by BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy and helping clients find balance. Clients are matched with one of 35,000 therapists for online therapy from anywhere at betterhelp.com/public. Innovative, immersive, and skillfully investigated. The Daily brings listeners today's stories as only the New York Times can report them. Go to nytimes.com/thedaily.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. Donald Trump has been sworn in today in Washington as the nation's 47th president after achieving something only one other president before him has done, win re-election to a non-consecutive second term. The first was Grover Cleveland in the late 1800s. Trump, during inauguration, was moved into the Capitol Rotunda because of cold weather, promising another golden age for America.
From this moment on, America's decline is over.
Trump also laid out a blitz of executive actions, including efforts to reduce prices.
I will direct all members of my cabinet to marshal the vast powers at their disposal to defeat what was record inflation and rapidly bring down costs and prices.
Later at Washington's Capital One Arena and at the White House, Trump has been signing executive actions, among them freezing federal hiring except the military, rescinding the previous Biden administration actions, and tonight he pardoned 1,500 people involved in the January 6 protests. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports the directives will address a wide range of issues that Trump has promised on day one, including policies that would dramatically overhaul U.S. border and immigration policy.
The flurry of executive actions is a show of strength as Trump aims to roll back Biden administration policies and reinstate orders from his first term in office. Matthew Dowling is a presidential historian at George Washington University.
He is going to use his power and then try to push the boundaries of the Constitution to enact what he said he would enact. Beyond that, though, I think that some seem quite audacious and or unconstitutional and problematic.
Many of Trump's executive actions, including ending birthright citizenship, are likely to be met with legal challenges. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
The Senate has unanimously confirmed Florida Republican Marco Rubio to be the next Secretary of State. NPR's Michelle Kelman reports.
Once he's sworn in, Rubio is expected to dive into work, hosting foreign ministers from India, Japan, and Australia at the State Department. The group, known as the Quad, is a key partnership in the Pacific and part of the U.S. efforts to counter China's influence. The three ministers are in Washington for Trump's inauguration. Marco Rubio has been a hawkish voice in the Senate on China, and in his confirmation hearing, he described China as a potent and dangerous adversary. He said the U.S. needs to build up its domestic industrial base so that Americans won't have to depend so much on goods from China. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR News in Washington. Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebrations are being held across the country today, including at King's former congregation in Atlanta, where a 70-member choir performed Hallelujah. During the ceremony at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, there was also a warning from Dr. King's daughter, Reverend Bernice King, about anti-woke rhetoric she says is being used to divide and distract people from real issues of injustice. Residents across the U.S. are facing frigid temperatures this week, even in the typically balmy Gulf South. Army Drew Haas of member station WWNO reports from New Orleans.
Some parts of Louisiana could get record-breaking snowfall, and at least a few inches of snow and sleet, as well as ice, are forecast for pretty much the entire region. Here's the state's governor, Jeff Landry.
This creates a very dangerous situation, not only for travel, but for people, pipes, pets, and plants.
Louisiana is borrowing plows and salt spreaders from Arkansas, since the state doesn't have its own. Still, Landry says some roads and bridges will be closed, and people should plan to stay home.
This is the time when you can cook you a big pot of gumbo.
You won't even have to keep it in the refrigerator, he says. Just put it outside. For NPR News, I'm Aubrey Uhas in New Orleans.
While U.S. financial markets are closed today for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday and the U.S. presidential inauguration, the cryptocurrency Bitcoin has been surging on global markets. Bitcoin rising above $109,000 earlier today. Donald Trump on the campaign trail vowed to make the U.S., quote, the crypto capital of the world. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include EBSCO, supporting open source technology and making open platforms possible for libraries of all sizes. Learn more at ebsco.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Well, this might actually be it. My last ever TikTok video. It has been fun here.
From the New York Times, I'm Sabrina Tavernisi, and this is The Daily.
And then exit right.
Well, guys, this might be the end of an era.
Over the past few weeks, users of the popular video app TikTok braced themselves.
I made so many friends and memories on here. I'm gonna miss you guys so much.
And I'm really gonna miss it, and I'm really gonna miss you. For a national ban to take effect.
Oh, it's actually going. What the?
This weekend, it did, and the app went dark.
Say bye. Hopefully we have a miracle and we'll get to TikTok, but it's not looking good for us.
But less than 24 hours later, it came back, crediting Donald Trump with flicking the switch.
Thank you, soon-to-be President Trump. I know I'm happy to be back. I'm sure a lot of you guys are as well. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one.
Today, my colleague, Sapna Maheshwari, on the biggest social media ban in American history, and whether Trump can actually stop it.
TikTok! 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 Yes! Yes! Yeah! Wow!
It's Monday, January 20th.
Oh my God, thank you.
Sapna, welcome back to The Daily.
Thanks for having me.
So we're talking on Sunday afternoon, and this morning, millions of Americans woke up to find that TikTok, the video platform with 170 million users, was no longer working. The U.S. government ban that's been talked about for months was finally here. But then, as we were preparing to take this episode with you, the app went back online. You are a TikTok expert. Help us understand what's going on here.
So, yes, it was a huge deal last night when TikTok went dark. It stopped working for people. Nobody knew what was happening. And you saw people posting tearful goodbye videos at first, then you couldn't see anything. You saw the App Store just start changing as people started rushing to this new Chinese app called Red Note. You saw people posting to Instagram, on Instagram Reels, on Blue Sky, just turning to everywhere they could to share how stunned and shocked they were.
Essentially fleeing the app because they could no longer post there.
Yeah, exactly. It was like digital refugees just trying to figure out where do we go to post now that this app that we use so much is suddenly gone. But then
12 hours. That's how long this lasted. Do you know how stressed I've been?
Around 12:30 p.m. today, the app came back.
TikTok's back!
But yeah, if you haven't heard, we're back now. Just ignore the last week of everything I've been saying.
And people have been freaking out. They're really excited.
And mind you, I slept through it.
But the situation is really fluid. We don't know what's going to happen. We're talking early afternoon Sunday, and when I wake up tomorrow, I really don't know what the situation will be.
Okay, so let's talk about how we got here. And I'll remind listeners that TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. It had tried to fight the ban all the way to the Supreme Court. Tell us what happened.
Right, so last year, Congress passed this law saying that TikTok had to be sold by ByteDance, their owner, to a non-Chinese company. And this law offered this deadline to make sure that ByteDance and TikTok did it. It said it has to be sold by January 19th, or some sort of talks have to be underway, or the company will face a ban in the United States.
And what was the thinking behind making it sell the company?
So for years, lawmakers have had these national security concerns around TikTok. They're kind of in two camps. One, they've said that U.S. user data could be handed over to the Chinese government based on laws that apply to companies in China. The other piece of it is lawmakers have said that there's a chance that TikTok could spread Chinese propaganda to millions of Americans without their knowledge. And the government's had these concerns for years, dating back to at least 2020. And this is the first time they really passed a law that was going to do something about it.
And the company, as I remember from your telling, actually objected on the basis of free speech. That free speech meant that it should be allowed to continue operating. But on Friday, as you're saying, the Supreme Court actually decided against the company and upheld the ban, which of course brings us to the situation we found ourselves in this morning.
That's right. TikTok said from when this legislation was first introduced that they would beat it, that it was unconstitutional, that it violated the free speech rights of TikTok users in America, and they gambled all the way to the Supreme Court. And astoundingly, the Supreme Court decided on Friday unanimously that the government had the right to implement this law and to ban TikTok if it didn't sell.
And so what happened after the court made that decision?
The court comes out with this decision on Friday, January 17th. This law is supposed to go into effect 2 days later on January 19th. So Saturday night, users of TikTok start seeing this pop-up message appear. And it says that, specifically, we are fortunate that President Trump has indicated that he will work with us on a solution.
So TikTok is saying that Trump is going to fix their situation, which is kind of confusing because Trump was against TikTok in his first administration.
That's right. This is a complete turnaround from how Trump felt about TikTok in 2020.
We're looking at TikTok. We may be banning TikTok. We may be doing some other things. There are a couple of options.
So if you rewind your memories back then, Trump was very anti-TikTok.
And here's the deal. I don't mind if, whether it's Microsoft or somebody else, a big company, a secure company, very, very American company, buy it.
And he said that it needed to be owned by American companies, and he tried to ban it.
It can't be controlled for security reasons by China. Too big, too invasive, and can't
And he brought up the same national security concerns that we've heard from lawmakers recently. They were really focused on the data. He said Beijing could find a way to get U.S. user data from TikTok, and that was unacceptable. So he wrote this executive order trying to ban the company, but it actually didn't hold up in federal courts. They said essentially he didn't have the authority to ban TikTok at the time. But this idea never went away, and his efforts actually gave rise to this law several years later that we're looking at now that basically demands this sale or ban of TikTok.
Okay, so Trump actually inspired the law we're talking about today.
That's right. So this law was inspired by Trump, and the company was really caught flat-footed. It had been hearing talk of a ban for years, and it had thought it was in pretty good shape heading into the new year. They had fought back a sort of ban effort the year before. President Biden joined TikTok around the time of the Super Bowl. But then this law passes, and the company scrambles. It's trying to figure out how to protect its huge operation in the U.S., its thousands of employees. The U.S. is its biggest market, and they think of Trump. They think of him as someone who, despite his efforts in 2020, might actually be willing to go to bat for the company this time.
But why is that, though? I mean, Trump, again, we've said, was the original naysayer on TikTok.
Right. So Trump had seemed to kind of change his tune on TikTok. He'd spent a lot of time in the past bashing one of the company's big competitors, which is Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram. And clearly, President Biden was willing to sign this law, and the company was thinking, maybe it should try its luck with a new Republican nominee.
So they decide to go after Trump. How do they woo him?
So the big player here is this conservative billionaire donor named Jeff Yass. He's a big Republican, and it turns out he owns about 15% of ByteDance shares. So he has this big stake in the future of TikTok. And we know that he had talks with Donald Trump at some point in March of last year. Around that time, Trump goes on CNBC, and he's got a different message about TikTok.
I could have banned TikTok. I had it banned just about. I could have gotten it done. But I said, you know what? But I'll leave
He's saying, yes, I'm aware of the security risks, but it shouldn't be banned.
The thing I don't like is that without TikTok, you can make Facebook bigger. And I consider Facebook to be an enemy of the people.
And, maybe there's another solution. And I don't want Facebook's business to really benefit from the loss of TikTok.
Frankly, there are a lot of people on TikTok that love it. There are a lot of young kids on TikTok who will go crazy without it.
And it's this really big change from what we'd seen in the past.
Okay, so this was the moment of Trump's full conversion to TikTok.
Yeah, and it leads to kind of the summer of Trump on TikTok, as I thought of it.
The president is now on TikTok. It's my honor.
He joins TikTok itself and becomes this huge hit in about June of last year.
No tax on tips, by the way, no tax on tips.
It was a total sensation. He got 3 million followers in a single day.
POV. 100 days left before President Trump delivers another knockout.
Got a good stand.
It goes way past Biden, who's the nominee at the time.
We're a nation in decline. Nobody is safe. Absolutely nobody. We're going to be a strong nation again. We're going to be.
And a bunch of his family members joined TikTok. And it feels like there's this turn on TikTok where conservatives see this as an invitation for them to join TikTok and to start making accounts and posting there.
You got to get out and vote. We want to save our country. We're the only one going to save it. That other group of people, they're going to destroy our country. We can't let that happen. Go out and vote for Trump.
So fast forward to November, Trump wins. TikTok looks pretty smart in all of this wooing. And now here we are on the eve of Trump's inauguration. And everything's really up in the air with the app. If we're looking at the letter of the law, what are Trump's options here?
So legally, there's not a lot of options. This law was designed to get ByteDance and TikTok to sell, and they basically had 9 months to get this done or to start talks, and it seems like there's nothing on the horizon. But there is a part of this law, a sort of magic button, a piece of the law that says that he can push all of this out by 90 days if Congress approves, as long as there's a qualified buyer, like basically someone who's willing to buy the company and real talks are underway. And so there's a chance that maybe this could push out the ban and keep it from from ever happening. But of course, that requires a buyer.
We'll be right back.
The Daily is supported by Glassdoor, announcing the best places to work in 2025 based on anonymous reviews from real employees. Learn who's leading the way in workplace culture and employee satisfaction, and see who's hiring at glassdoor.com.
Listeners of The Daily, get to the heart of the stories shaping the world. For more on today's episode, go to nytimes.com/thedaily. Distribution of The Daily is made possible by American Public Media. APM produces and distributes programs that entertain and engage audiences everywhere.
This is News 88.7.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on TV 8.6. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World helps us understand the movements, conflicts, and cultures that connect us all. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at HoustonPublicMedia.org.
Support comes from Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. Texas family-owned and operated since 1962, offering a large selection of wines, spirits, and beers to choose from. Details at specsonline.com. The fun starts here. Support comes from Blake Hillegeist Real Estate, independent commercial and residential real estate broker with over 30 years experience guiding clients through economic downturns, realty challenges, and everyday life situations. More at BlakeSellsHouston.com.
Sapna Maheshwari on the biggest social media ban in American history, the ban on TikTok, and whether Trump can actually stop it. So Sapna, Trump says he's going to be TikTok's savior. He's going to kind of negotiate a deal. What do we know about prospective buyers?
So TikTok's big problem for selling this whole past year has been this big question, which is what exactly is for sale? And let me explain that a little more. So basically, TikTok's algorithm is what makes it what it is. And that's the technology that fuels the videos that people see when they open the app. The magic of seeing something that is suddenly so funny or just totally suited to your interests, the TikTokiness of the app is the algorithm. And it's really unclear if that's for sale. And that's because TikTok's been saying for the better part of a year that it can't sell, largely because it's not quite sure that China would allow it to. And that's because in 2020, China put out this list of technology that can't be exported without the government's permission. And it seems like the TikTok algorithm is a part of that list.
So given all of that, has anyone actually shown up to buy it?
So despite this for sale sign on TikTok from last year, there hasn't been a whole lot of activity, but some names have been floated. There's been speculation that Elon Musk, who bought Twitter, might have the money to buy it. And then there's this billionaire named Frank McCourt, who used to own the Dodgers, and he said he's interested in buying TikTok too. He's teamed up with people like Mr. Wonderful of Shark Tank.
Okay.
And he said that he wants to buy TikTok without the algorithm.
And what does that mean?
Basically, he thinks he'll be able to buy it and find a way to recreate sort of the engine behind it. But he really wants to get access to the users, and he's offered a pretty low price for it, about $20 billion. A lot of people have found that to be maybe not the most serious offer for what TikTok could really be worth, which some analysts have said, around $100 billion or more.
Wow. So the algorithm is critical to the value of the company, and we still, at this point, don't know whether China is willing to let go of it.
That's right. It's been the huge question mark hanging over this from the very beginning. And there has been a lot of signaling happening. And this is where it's gotten really interesting. The CEO of TikTok, Shou Chew, has said he wants to figure something out. And Trump Trump posted something last week, the same day of the Supreme Court ruling, where he said he'd just gotten off the phone with President Xi Jinping from China, saying that they had a long discussion and TikTok was on the list of things that they want to solve together. We're also seeing that Trump has developed a little bit of a relationship with the CEO of TikTok. He's invited him to the inauguration, and the Chinese vice president is also attending the inauguration.
Sapna, what is that? What is Trump doing there? I mean, inviting the CEO of TikTok to attend his inauguration.
I mean, it seems to be a clear sign of support for TikTok. From the public statements that Trump has been making in the past week, he wants to be seen as the savior of TikTok, the person behind bringing this app to Americans and giving them something that, you know, brings them joy from day one of his presidency.
Okay, so both sides here are really signaling that they want a deal, Trump and China. But each side seems to have a different vision of what a potential fix through that deal would be, right? Like for China, presumably a deal might be okay if it didn't include the algorithm.
That's right. And I mean, it really raises the question of what else could be